All right. What did we learn last night? We started with our JSON. What does JSON stand for? JavaScript object notation. You got it, Kenny. So break those words down, right? JavaScript, we know JavaScript. And it's kind of odd because JSON can actually be used with lots of other programming languages and has become, much like HTML, a standard on the internet of how we can communicate data across multiple programming languages. So JavaScript, all right. Object, what's an object? Those key value pairs. JSON can also be used to represent any data type that JavaScript supports, or most of the data types, I should say. So strings, numbers, Booleans, objects, and also arrays. And then notation. Why is it notation? Well, the notation is saying, hey, this is the symbol, this is the structure, this is the syntax that we're using to annotate what a JavaScript object looks like. So even though object is in the name of JavaScript object notation, JSON isn't actually an object. When we convert into JSON, we stringify. So JSON itself is usually a string. And then we are able to parse that, thank you, Jen and Kenny, back into an object. So JSON is a way that we can convert a string to an object or an object to a string. We saw splice for the first time last night, right? How do we take the first part of a string, splice and substring related to each other? And we saw how we could use that in a template literal. And then we also saw how we can use a ternary operator to put in the ... but only if the post was over a certain length. We got into local storage a little bit, and we saw how we can save information across multiple pages and access that. We started putting our objects into arrays. Why did we need that array, right? So we could have multiple posts, multiple objects worth of data. Taylor, it's not necessarily that splice and substring are totally interchangeable. There are slight differences between both of them, but in our use case, it would have been interchangeable. There weren't major differences between the two of them, to the point where we could actually take out substring and put in splice. Both of them would work perfectly fine. Corwin mentioned we also had our two local time string, right? Our two locale time string. And that was a way to convert our time milliseconds into an actual timestamp with AM, PM in a way that actually made sense, so we could see what time that post was made. Did anything else stick out last night? Any light bulb moments? Anything that you found interesting? How are we feeling about JavaScript blog, other than ready to wrap this up today?
I think it's helping us get used to working with multiple JavaScript and HTML files and crossing between all of them. Because we hadn't really done that up to this point.
Yeah, it kind of shows you kind of what a bigger scale project will be like, right? And that goes for your capstone. And it's kind of interesting because once you get some functionality working in your capstone and your vanilla JavaScript working, you're also going to be learning React around the same time. And that's going to allow you to add in even more functionality, make more data calls, all of that stuff. So JavaScript, like you guys were saying, just experience with it, right? We've got one more week of it coming up next week. Tomorrow we are off from class for OpenHack, and then we are in person for class all of next week, except for Thursday. We are taking off for Rock on Tech. So I will post this in the chat in case anyone needs to copy it. Monday's class is going to be, yep, in the Science Center edition at Science Center edition 101. And I will also post the Lemoyne map. It is building number 3 on this map. Did it finally let me attach? Yes, it does. You can park in lot C or A as always. And we are going to be in number 3. That is where we will have the presentation from the New York State Office of Information Technology. And then that will be an hour-long presentation. After that, we will kind of travel as a group over to our other classroom that we will be in for the rest of the week. And that is going to be Greenwin Hall 408. So Monday class, Science Center edition, room 101. We'll have the presentation, our guest speaker there, and then we will go over to Greenwin Hall. It will be recorded and you can attend on Zoom like always, but we encourage everyone to make it in person if they can, just because it's nice to see all of your faces and have that personal touch. It was lovely to see some of you guys at the TCG Player Tour today. Sorry, I had to run out at the end of that. I had another meeting I had to get to. But in person, Science Center Edition 101, if you can make it. If you can't, join in on Zoom. If you can't join in on Zoom, it will be recorded as always. And then we will head over to Greenwin Hall 408 for the second half of class on Monday. Tuesday and Wednesday's class will be in that room. And then on Thursday, we are off. Next Thursday, we are off as well for Rock on Tech. No big deal if you can't make it in person. We'll still count you remotely for attendance, but would love to see all of your faces there if you can be. Okay. Any questions before we dive into our final part of the JavaScript blog?
How long is gonna be the Rock on Tech over there? Like, is it gonna be like a half a day or?
It's a full day event. So Rock on Tech starts at I think 9 and goes all the way until 5.
Okay, that's fine because I have to drive to the city after. I have to come back and drive.
It is 8:45 to 5 p.m. Registration and networking is at 8:45, and then the welcome kicks off at 9:30. And then it goes all the way. We've got a lunch break at 1 to 2. And the last event is 3:15 to 4. And then there is a cocktail hour and a vendor showcase, which will probably stick around for an hour, make sure everyone gets an opportunity to see all the different sponsors there. If you are feeling courageous, you can print out a copy of your resume. If you have it, make sure that you've got a copy of, make sure you've got careers in code on your resume, but there will probably be some vendors there that are also hiring. So that can be a great opportunity to turn a non-career fair into a career fair for yourself. I also recommend having business cards on you if you can. I definitely used a couple of them today at the TCG Player Tour. I got some networking done. So if you have a chance, business cards by next Thursday. If you order them online now from a company like Vistaprint, there's a good chance that you'll get them by next Thursday, or you can always order them at Staples. I personally have not had the best of luck of printing business cards, but you can always pick up business card paper, print it yourself, and rip and tear it off.
What should we put on there, like on the business card? Like, like
name, name, some kind of title, right? You can say aspiring full stack developer. You don't have to have the title. That's kind of optional, but I like putting that on there. Phone number and email address, and then your personal domain, if you have it set up, are really the only 5 pieces of information you need. Name, title, optional, phone, email, website.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions? Definitely take advantage of your Common Space memberships if you have them. Great place to tune into class. And probably has a better filter system thanks to COVID than most of our homes. All right. Last call for questions. Any logistics questions? Any questions about code from yesterday? Any questions whatsoever?
Hi Max, this is Rain.
Yep.
So one, I had a light bulb moment when you introduced JSON or JavaScript object notation yesterday. Just want to say that. And I was really happy that I, got to see it visualized. I've been seeing the word the acronym JSON everywhere when I'm looking up code. So that was great. Also, being that we are about to complete JavaScript, are APIs coming up soon?
APIs are the very next module. So
Oh,
we finish JavaScript next week, which will be June 12th to the 15th. Then you guys finally get rid of me again, and Ryan Goss comes in, who is you may have met at I don't know if you have met him in office hours. Anyway, he'll be coming in June 19th. Ryan has been with the Careers in Code program since the very beginning. And he will be spending 2 weeks on not only APIs, but the internet, how packets work, kind of all of that kind of stuff. And it's I think nice for you guys to get a different teaching style, right? I think you've already seen major differences between how I teach and how Nathan teaches. Ryan also has a different teaching style that I think you guys will enjoy. So he'll be coming in the week of the 19th, and you are stuck with him until the 29th. I will mention that we do have the 19th off. Monday, we have off for Juneteenth. So you will meet Ryan on the 20th, actually. Both of his weeks are fully virtual. He will probably end up having office hours for you guys too, in case you have any questions. And then we have our summer break. So the week of 4th of July, the 3rd through the 6th of July, we have off. And when you come back, you are stuck with me. We will do a little API review to make sure everything sunk in. When we come back from summer break, we also have a capstone check-in. So don't let that slip by you. As soon as I come back, we hit you right out of the gate with a capstone check-in. And then we dive into API review and then into React itself. So a way to better integrate our API calls and our data into our JavaScript without having to do inner HTML and that kind of stuff. I don't know that there is any pre-reading for the API module, although that is a really good question. So just give me 1 second. I'm going to check.
Yeah, because I would like to, with my project, hopefully incorporate APIs. So that's awesome. Thanks.
Yes, and in fact, all of your capstones will be integrating an API, whether it's an API that you found off the shelf that you want to use, or an API that you will be building yourself. So we're going to, after React, we learn about databases, and then we go into full stack JavaScript, where we make our own APIs through Express. And so that will be what is coming up after the React module. Give me 1 second. Okay. All right, any other questions? Okay, well, let's go ahead and dive on in. So I am headed to my C5 my code. I am headed to my week 9 and I am duplicating my day 2 to be the final day 3 of this project. I am also going to drop a link in the Zoom chat. If you are a little bit behind, I'm going to send you my day 2 code so that you can reference that as well. I am also going to go to my day 3 code. I am going to pop that open in my VS Code. If it doesn't want to fight me, I will drop a link to the live share in the chat. I'm going to go live. I am going to pop open my index.html and my index.js. And I'm going to put my index.js down on the second half of my screen. I am also going to pop open my read.js and my read.html, just so I've got all of my tabs set up where I want that. Okay, so where did we leave off yesterday? Well, we were looking at this post and this post got truncated, right? There's a ... here. Well, what we want to be able to do is click on this read more button and have that post's information come up. Okay, cool idea, but how do we know which one of the posts they clicked read more on, right? If they click read more on the third post should come up here. If they click read more on this post, that content should come up here instead. So we need some way in our index to send over what button they're clicking on. Well, if we look at our index.html, we're already using that to generate out our A H tag. And all of that is in our template literal already. Well, if all of that's in there, we need some way to generate out the unique ID for this post. Now, you may say, hey, Max, these posts are an array. And so those arrays are going to be indexed, right? 0, 1, 2. So let's just use that index to keep track of which one they're clicking on. Not a terrible idea, and it would probably work, but we try not to use array indexes as unique identifiers. The reasoning behind that is because what happens when you delete a post? Well, if you delete the first post, now all of a sudden the second post is now the first post. And so now that ID that you generated out for that person, that URL is going to take you to a different place. And we're like, well, we don't want that, right? We want to generate out some URL here that even if we delete that post, it will still take you to the same spot and say, hey, that post can't be found. Or it's not going to shift around all the other URLs based off of that one that we removed from the array. So instead, what we're going to do here is we are going to use the timestamp instead of the index as our information. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a question mark here. That question mark tells the browser, hey, this is some additional information. This is some additional parameters that are getting sent into the read page. So the browser knows anything after the question mark isn't actually going to impact what page we're opening. It's just additional information we're trying to send through to that page. So we're going to say question mark timestamp equals, And the get parameters are URL parameters. Anything that comes after the question mark, just like a JavaScript object, uses key value pairs. The key or the name of the parameter comes before the equal, then the equal comes in, and then we're going to use our template literal and drop in the post timestamp. Okay, now let's see what that looks like. I'm going to go ahead and save this. I'm going to head back to my home page. And now when I hover over any of these links, I can't blow it up, but look down at the bottom. You see that URL has changed. It now has timestamp equals and then that long number after it. And if we click on any one of those, look at what's coming up in my read.html, this timestamp information. If you have timestamp equals null or timestamp equals undefined, you have a mistake somewhere in here where that timestamp is not coming out into our URL. Okay, well, now that we've got this timestamp, how do we access it inside our post page? What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my read page. I'm going to go to my read.js, and we've got to do some work to get access to those URL parameters. So I'm going to start by saying, hey, I need access to the params. And in order to do that, what I do is I make a URL from the window.location.href. Remember, window is like math and document. It kind of gives us access to the browser window itself. The browser is what's keeping track of all of this. And then location has a couple pieces of information associated with it. We want specifically the href. Once we do that, we are able to get the date ID by using the params we just created up here and going to the search params. The search params are another word for URL parameters or get parameters, all kind of in that same family. Don't spell search wrong like me. It should be camel case. Do not have capital H in there. My bad. And what we are going to do is we are going to get out the timestamp. Why is it timestamp? Because in our index.js, that's what we called the key here. So we use that same key to get out the timestamp. And if all of that is working, I should be able to console log out my date ID. And if I pop that open in my console, I should now see my number that is up in our URL.
Nothing's showing in my console on the website. Is that normal?
Do you have in your URL the timestamp?
I should, yeah. I mean, yeah, I'm not entirely too sure what's going on. Timestamp, URL. Yeah, I'm sure, yeah, it should be there. I mean,
So when you click on the read more button on any one of these pages, does the timestamp show up properly?
okay, never mind. I see it now. The 168609. Okay.
Yep.
I think it's because I was on the home page. Sorry. My bad.
Yep, you do have to click read more on one of these to get into that page that has the console. You should not have a prototype array 0, Jen. Go ahead and share your screen. So that is console logging out your posts. We need to console log out the date ID. on line 7. And be careful, you've got a lowercase d in 5 and a capital D. Yep. And there you go. Now you're all caught up. Palash, great question. Why is it not get item? Why is it just get? Well, in JavaScript, it would make sense if we could consistently choose get item or just get, but because it is search params, they have chosen to use the get function in order to get things out of it. Compared to our window local storage, we use get item. Why couldn't they just decide one or the other? No clue. But for local storage, it's get item. For the search params, it's get. No idea why. Okay, do we have the basic flow of this down? In our index.js, we're looping over all of the posts. The posts are all coming out from our local storage that we have parsed. Once we parse them, we generate out this HTML for each one of our posts. That's what our homepage is showing here, right? When we come down here, though, we don't want to just take them to the read page. We want to be able to tell the read page which one of them they clicked on. So now we take the post unique timestamp and include that as a URL get or search parameter. They all kind of mean the same thing in that anchor tag. Now, when we click on one of those anchor tags, where is it sending us? It's still taking us to the read.html page, but because this question mark is here, it knows that this timestamp isn't actually part of the file path that we're trying to get to. It's more information that the page gets access to. So in order to get access to that page, that information, we have to use this URL along with the search params get, which gets us access to whatever ID was added to our URL. Goggin, what's up?
So the search params, is there like a global scope kind of
It
thing?
is. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, URL is global scope, just like JSON is, window, document. Those are all kind of built into JavaScript itself.
Okay, so you just name param, like, on the line 4, you just named a param, so more understandable.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
You could call that like URL details if you wanted to, or something like that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we've got our date ID here. And now I'm thinking, all right, where is all of our data? We actually did this work yesterday to get the posts, right? And I can see that in my console. But the problem is these are all 3 of my posts. And on top of that, I can't just say, go find me that post. I need to be able to tell it, hey, go look at this object. And if this timestamp up in the URL matches this timestamp in the object, that's the particular post that we're looking for. It's almost like we need to tell the computer how to find the right post. So to do that, I'm going to say const matching post equals go to my posts and find a post. And then we tell it, well, how does it go about finding a post? Well, we're going to get access to each individual post. This is kind of like a loop. It's a loop that is going through to find a particular post. So it's going to start with the first post. And if it's going to give us the first post in the search post. It's going to run some algorithm, figure out if it's the right one. And if it's not, it's going to move on to the second post and look in search post, put that in search post. Does search post equal whatever we're looking for? If it does, great. That's going to go into matching post. If it doesn't, keep running through all of the posts until you find one that matches. So now that we get access to the search post, we have to tell it, how does it know to compare these two together? Well, what we're going to say is, hey, does the search post dot timestamp equal the date ID that we just got from the params. And to test if this is working, I'm going to console log out my matching post. So I save, I come over, and now look at what is in my console. It is the correct post for this timestamp. And if I go back and I pick another post, look at what shows up. Second post. I go back, I go to my third post, look at what I've got, my third post. So what we just wrote was actually our first algorithm, which is kind of cool. Our algorithm here says go to the posts, go find one of the posts where the post's timestamp is equal to the date ID that we pulled out from the URL. If you've got an undefined in your console or a null, something's not right, we need to take a look. Kenny, search post is not a variable that we created earlier. It is a variable provided by the find function that's saying, hey, every time we go over another item in an effort to find what you're looking for, where do you want us to put the item that we're currently looping over? So search post is you could name that anything you wanted, but it is not something that we've like defined earlier. It's just saying, hey, when we're looking over these items and finding that, what do you want us to dump that thing into while you're looking for that?
Mine is not working for some reason.
You have a double equal or a triple equal?
Double equal.
All right, share screen.
All right, share my screen. Probably a typo or something.
Okay, so you've got post is not defined on line 6 because we need to search through all of the posts
Oh.
to find the right post. And you also have a double S in timestamp that Shay beat me to.
And this has to be a PM. Oh, sorry. Wait, where?
You have a times stamp. Yep. And you're missing a G in matching post.
Yep. There you go.
There you go.
Thank you.
Yep. Because Sequoia asked, why are we not putting an S on the search post? Because we only get one post every time that loop runs. Let me show you the equivalent of what this find is doing. What we're basically doing is saying let matching post exist. And we're going to do a for loop to say go over all of the posts. And if the post dot timestamp equals the date ID we're looking for, then this must be the post we're looking for. So create this thing called matching post, go over all of the posts, and while you're going over each one of the posts, give me access to each individual post. Now, if that individual post timestamp is equal to the date ID that we pulled out of the URL, then this must be the post we're looking for, so store it in matching post. In fact, this code would work exactly the same, and you'll notice that I still get my post in the console. But we have to find items, or basically filter items, so much in an array that this find function is kind of a shorthand so that we don't have to write all of this down here. But if you want to think about what this find is doing, this is basically the long version of that. So I'm actually going to put this up here and then say the short version. And comment this out. Plush, what's up?
Does the shorthand have any name like ternary operator is for if statement? Or is it just the syntax that find takes in its
It
parameters?
is. They are all array functions. So there are other array functions. We've seen some like push and shift and unshift. Find and filter are actually two new-ish. They came out in 2015 array functions. So they are also known as ES6 or ES 2015 functions, just because that's when they came out in the JavaScript language. So they are also known as ES5, ES 2015, or ES6. ES6 came out in 2015, I think. But array functions is what they all kind of fall under.
Gotcha. So it just takes this this syntax as the argument parameters inside the brackets.
For parameters and arguments, I use interchangeably and they're not. This would be a parameter in
Right.
this case. Yes.
Right. Okay.
And so, good thing worth mentioning, if I go to W3 schools and I say array find, I'm going to get the documentation that shows me that I get the current value of basically what I'm looping over to find it. And if give me an example. Ages.find. So in this case, it is trying to find where the numbers in this array are greater than the value that gets typed in. And so what we do is we get access to the age as we're looping over everything. And if the age in the array is greater than the value that gets typed in here, we will find that particular age.
Oh, I see. So you're passing a function in here inside the.
I am. And you could get, don't follow me on this, you could get more verbose. You could say something like this. And at this point, we are running a function. However, there is shorthand that we can use. If we don't include these curly braces, it will basically just use this statement to evaluate out true or false. Although this would work perfectly fine. So if you have a more advanced algorithm where you need to take more steps for each item you're looping over, you can use that function. But if you're just doing a quick equality operator, you don't need to put the function in. You can just leave it as is, and it will know, hey, just check for true or false, as opposed to running this function, checking the output of the function, and then checking to see if it's true or false.
Got it. I remember it now from Code Academy's prerequisite, the shorthand. Thank you.
Yeah, that is all ES6 shorthand. When arrow functions, or ES5 or ES6, I always get the two mixed up. I think it's ES6, but ES 2015. But all of that shorthand was built in around the same time that the find and filter methods came out. Goggin, what's up?
So and maybe you repeated this already, but search post is the name of the function basically, right? That we
No.
want.
Find is the name of the function. Search post is the parameter that the find method find function is going to loop over everything in our array. And as it's looping over everything, it's going to dump it into search post. So compare it to this up here.
Okay, I got it. So it's just like a variable that is storing all the information is coming from the timestamp and the post.
Yes, we can't just say, go find me the timestamp that lines up with my date ID. What we can do is say, go use this find method loop through all of the posts and check to see if that post timestamp lines up with the date ID. If it does, great, we can stop looping through everything we found it. If it doesn't, keep on going through each one of the posts until you do find it. And when you do, you can stop it and store it in matching post.
Got it.
Corin, what's up?
I don't know what I did last night. I was like playing around with stuff. Seeing it, I was like deleting stuff and like seeing if I could like enter it back in, see if I got it. I done deleted something and I don't know what I entered it in. I'm gonna show you really quick.
Yep. See if we
I
can get a
messed-
quick fix for you.
Yeah. Whole lot of red.
Okay, object is not valid JSON on new post 20. So let's head over there and take a look.
I don't know. Was it HTML?
No, it will be in your JavaScript.
Okay.
Line 20. Post is string, get items. So okay, so I think you got something funky in your local storage. So I am going to head over to the application tab and I'm going to go to your local storage and I am going to clear everything that is in it. Now I'm going to make a new post and that is all working. I'm going to try a second post just to make sure that still works.
That's crazy.
And it does. And now when I go to my read more page, we're missing in your index.js. We can't just throw the timestamp in here. We need to say, hey, there are some URL parameters or get parameters coming your way. That's what the question mark means. And then we're going to say the timestamp is equal to the timestamp coming from the template literal. So now if we click on our post, it takes us to the right timestamp and you'll notice the right content is coming out in your console.
Thank you.
No problem. Anyone else need help? Okay. Well, we've done most of the hard work here. We've got this object here. Yeah, it took a little bit to find it, to get the URL parameters out, to line them all up. But now that we have that object, we can start attacking our HTML. So I'm going to go to my read section and I notice I've got this H1, this H2, all of that stuff there. That is what I want to emulate for my post. So I'm going to put a div ID in here that says post content. And what I want to do is I want to go to my document and get element by ID, go get the post content and make the inner HTML of that equal a template literal that has all of this stuff inside of it. And except for the H1. The H1 should stay up here in my container because this is never going to change, right? That's just the title of my blog. So I only want the dynamic content to be down in my JavaScript. So the post title goes here. I'm going to say matching post dot title. And the p tag is going to get my matching post dot content. And I can even get fancy here and add in, I don't know, maybe an H5 with the matching post dot author. And I can maybe throw an H6 in here, which with my matching post dot timestamp. And because that's showing up as a weird number, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my index.js and take my little toLocale trick. And now I've got my blog and I've got my whole post in here. And if I hit return to home, I can go to any one of these posts and see the correct content. Take a minute to appreciate that once you get it working. We created one read page. With this read page, we were able to use the information sent in from the URL params to generate out this HTML so that we only have to create one page, and in that one page, it will properly pull in the correct content for us. Excuse me.
So
Normally I'm quicker on the mute button, but it was just faster to push away the mic at that point. So sorry if I blew anyone's ears out. Yes, that was a lot of code. Once you get it working, take a minute to go back through, see if you understand it. Only 23 lines of JavaScript here, but what you just wrote in 23 lines is making this page fully dynamic, so we don't need to create a separate HTML file for each page. That's a big deal. It's a very big deal, and a concept that we'll be using.
So Max, I just have a question. I just want to make sure that I have this right. So let's say we create another post, another blog post. We wouldn't have to do any of this over. It will just automatically do it.
Great question. Let's find out. I hit create post. And what happens on my home page, our new post shows up. Well, why is that? That is because our index knows how to go to local storage, parse that sucker out, goes, oh, there are now 4 posts instead of 3 posts. I'm going to loop over all 4 of them. And when it's looping over all of that, it's going to go down to this anchor tag section. Can someone else see my screen? Okay. Okay. Go to the A tag, and instead of just sending them to read, depending on whatever the timestamp is of this post, it is now going to be a different timestamp than this one, or this one. So I come down here, I click on this read more, and look at what's happening. Same thing that happened on our index.html. It said, oh, I'm going to go pull out those posts from local storage. I'm going to go get the date ID information. I'm going to go find the date ID that lines up with the timestamp from local storage. And then I'm going to generate out this HTML based off of wherever we found our matching post. So in answer to your question, yes, because we did all of that work, we now do not need to create a new page or make any additions. We're building out that functionality, and because we have the functionality, it is not something that we need to create from scratch every time. Jen, what's up?
All right, stop me if this is a really stupid question. I know you have date in there, but I don't see the date anywhere on the posts or anything like that. Is it just doing the time of day? And if it is,
Yeah, you notice we have toLocale time string in here. What we can do is say toLocale date string, and it will give us the date, but now it got rid of the time. I don't think there is a date time toLocale.
Can we
JavaScript.
do another period and then to locale date after the to locale time?
To locale string gives us both the date and the time.
Ah, there you go. Cool.
Not that I had to look that up or anything. Flush, what's up?
In this line in H6, where Jen was just asking about, why do we have to add new? Like new creates a new object, right? And yeah, like will it not work without it, or
Well, it does. I don't have, I don't know the answer to why. So basically what we just wrote is the equivalent of saying like, our date equals a new date with,
Mhm.
with the, don't follow me on this. So that's essentially what we're doing.
Right.
Date is an object, right? And so when we use new with it, we're using it as a constructor. However, we frequently don't see object-oriented JavaScript. While JavaScript supports object-oriented, it typically is not used when we write our JavaScript. Dates are kind of unique because there are a lot of functions associated with them. And so we use the new keyword to make an instance of the date, and then we are able to call the toLocale string on our instance of the date because we instantiated it as a new object or new object of the class. And so we have to use the new operator there so that date knows to construct itself using the timestamp of the information that we're passing in.
what do you mean construct?
Construct is a object-oriented programming term that says, hey, we've got this class, but when you want a new instance of the class, when you basically want to create a object from that class, we have to construct it using the new term.
Okay, like does construct is a synonym of declaring a variable, something like that?
Yes, constructing is like creating. So like when we use a class, you can kind of think of it as a template. And then when we declare each version of that class, when we declare that new variable, we use the new word to construct it.
Okay,
So it's kind of like declaring a copy of that instance for the class.
okay, understood.
But take all of that with a grain of salt because we don't dive deep into object-oriented programming because JavaScript does not, it rarely uses it. Date is one of the few times that it does. So I find that object-oriented programming is actually easier to understand in Python or Java or C++, because they were built from the ground up to be object-oriented. JavaScript, on the other hand, was not object-oriented. And then a couple years into its existence, it was like, oh, we should get on board with this whole object-oriented trend. And so it supports object-oriented programming, but it very rarely is used because JavaScript is used more of a scripting language than it is as an object-oriented language. So because of that, JavaScript is considered a multi-paradigm programming language in that it supports both object-oriented and not object-oriented, but dates are this weird area where object-oriented programming busts into scripting because we need to be able to construct the date before we are able to use functions like toLocale string on it.
Okay, understood. So it's like when we use the word new, does it mean it creates a version of just objects, or you can use new on anything, like any variable, any data type?
you could only use it on a class, which date is technically a class.
Okay. Okay.
Object-oriented programming, though, is like, unfortunately not part of our curriculum, but a big part about learning Python and Java, and I think C++. So I would say pump the brakes on object-oriented questions, because we won't be, other than date, we won't really see that new keyword anywhere else. But what you're getting at is, how do we use classes? How do we use inheritance? And then when we construct those classes, we get an instance of that class. What does that mean? Those are kind of all the questions that you're asking without fully knowing what you're asking, I think.
True. You're right. Yeah. A lot is going over my head. But yeah, I get it. Thank you.
So I'm just going to put that back to the way it was. It's a very good question, just one that would require like 2 or 3 days to teach to like fully wrap your head around it. Goggin, what's up?
For some reason, it's not showing on mine.
Do you have an error?
No.
Okay, shows me.
Let me see. Hold on, let me see. All right.
Jen, yes, they are in storage. So the date time will never change unless you clear the storage or delete the storage or update the item in storage with a new value. Okay, so hit one of your read more buttons. And you do have an error.
Oh shit! It just came up right now.
So it should be to locale. So put an E after the word local.
Right here.
Yep.
E. Oh.
It's locale time string because it's actually using your local location. And so if you go to the UK and you update your date preferences in your computer, the day will actually come before the month and then the year. And so that's why it is to locale time string or to locale string, because it is using the local date formatting information to display that, which is kind of cool, right? That this is loading in a certain format, but if you sent this link to a friend in the UK, their date format would actually show up instead of the date format that's loading on our computers.
Cool.
All right, any other questions on this so far? All right, I'm gonna forge forward here. I've got 3 more features that I would like to add to this. I would like to be able to log in. And if I can log in, I only want logged in people to be able to create new posts. I would like the ability to delete a post. And then given how much time we have left at the end of class, we can decide if we want to take on editing a post or not. Sound good? Okay. So I'm gonna head back to my homepage and I'm like, all right, I don't want this new post button to show up. I really want a login button to show up. And if you're logged in, then it should show the new post button. But if you're not logged in, it should show the login button. What's that sound like to you guys?
Change on event.
What?
Is it a change on event?
It's not a change on event because the user isn't really interacting with it. On the page load, we want to say, if this thing is true, show this. If this other thing is true, show this. So it is kind of an if statement, but because we can do that in line, we could do it as a ternary operator as well. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to go to my window. I'm going to go find my new post. And no, we can't do it as a ternary. Bad idea, Max. We're going to do it as an if statement. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a div ID in here that says something like action links. And I'm gonna take, I'm gonna leave my A tag outside of that for a second. I'm gonna go back to my index.js. I'm gonna go down to the very bottom of it. And what I am going to say is if my window.local storage dot is logged in equals the word true, then my document get element by ID action links is going to have the inner HTML of this A tag. Else, if we're not logged in, give me an action link, but take me to the login page instead. I think it's important once you get it working, say, all right, maybe I wouldn't have come up with that if I tried to do it on my own. But now that I know what the answer is, do I understand the answer? Do I understand this answer enough that if I wanted to try the same thing on my capstone, I would actually be able to do it without referencing the code? You go, no, I couldn't do that. Well, go back through and say, all right, it's an if statement. What are we checking for? All right, we got to go to local storage, right? That's how we're going to figure out if we're logged in or not. All right. Now what are we doing? Well, we got to put some HTML somewhere. So we got to use document for that. And we're putting it inside. So we got to use inner HTML. Now, what are we putting inside of that? Well, we're putting the login link, or that's just an A tag to the login screen. And if we are logged in, we're going to take them to the new post page. All right, maybe not quite as scary as we thought. Okay, so I've got my new post, I've got my login. And now I'm like, all right, I click on the login button. Cannot get login.html. All right, we gotta make another freaking screen. And go in, create a new file, login.html. I'm gonna put in my HTML template. I'm gonna go steal my bootstrap from my index page. Paste that in. And I'm gonna say, all right, got to put everything in a div class container. I'm gonna throw in a label here for an email. And all of that should probably be in a form. And I'm gonna put my input type equals text equals email. And I'm going to put a class on this of form-control. Where did my form control come from? Well, I happen to notice on my new post.html, every time I used a form control, this input automatically looked nice for me. Why? Because that's coming from my bootstrap. So I'm going to do the same thing on my login. I'm going to copy this. Let's throw a ID on here of email. Copy this whole thing and paste it down and say password. Put my type as a password. Put an ID of password. And the last thing we're going to need is a button with a type of submit. Log in, and we'll throw a class on that of BTN and BTN primary. I save, I come back over, I refresh, and now I've got my email, my password, and my login. Throw a little styling on this, maybe say an H1, Max's blog. Put a H2 on here of login. Throw a header row in there, and we will call that a day.
Max, why did we use, when we did the input type, we did form control, why did we use that again?
Form control is, so take a look. I've got this like nice rounded thing. I've got spacing around it. If I take that form control off, look at how ugly it gets. Form control is the name of the class that Bootstrap gives us that styles all of our inputs in our form. Why it's called form control and not form input or something like that, no clue. But if we look at our get Bootstrap and we head to the docs and we go down to the forms overview, you can see that form control is what they put on the inputs to make the inputs pretty. And so we just use that same thing on ours. Everyone get a login screen? Anyone need help or need another minute?
One minute.
Okay. Jen, it sounds like you've got some issues.
You got them too. You got more than I do.
Don't look at those. They're calling me a bad developer and a bad teacher, and I don't like it. No, those are legitimate things of, so when we build things out, the autocomplete is an attribute so that the browser knows if you're using like a password manager, how to autocomplete it for you. No idea what navigator thing is. And then this is saying for accessibility reasons, you really should tie the label that we use to the form field. And that would make it so that if we clicked on the word email, it would actually focus the input for us. Those are all genuine things that we could improve upon. But for the sake of just getting through the project, I'm going to ignore them for now. But they are all legitimate things. Goggin, what's up?
Where did he get this login form from? From Bootstrap?
I just built it using Bootstrap, but I just built it.
Oh.
Sounds like a silly question, but it's a valid question. Because I think as you guys are starting to build out your capstones, you're like, I don't want to do this from scratch. So what do? You go to Bootstrap and you pull in this giant hunk of code and you dump it in. And then you're like, that doesn't look like the way I want it to. And so you start making changes to it. And then you don't really understand it in the first place. And you make other changes to it. And now you make it worse, right? And so it is important to say, all right, is it better? I'm building this interface from scratch. I've wireframed all of it out. Is it better to build with each individual component and build up to what I want, as opposed to taking a giant hunk of code, dumping it in, and then trying to modify that? Sometimes with a nav bar, it is actually better to take the whole hunk of code, dump it in, and delete items out. However, there are other times where we could look at the Bootstrap form and get a bunch of features that we don't actually want. So in this case, even though Bootstrap did give me a pretty good example with the email and the password, Instead, what I chose to do is build it up from scratch instead of taking that whole section of code and dumping it in. It's not to say that taking the whole section of code is a bad thing, but it is something to kind of figure out, hey, is this something that I can build up, or is this something that I want to take their whole example in and pare down? All right, any questions on this?
I have a question. Where did we put that action links div again? In which HTML file? 'Cause there's a
In
lot.
our index.html, I put it right at the bottom. That div is replacing our new post button.
Thank you.
All right. The good news is that this is the last of the HTML that we are writing tonight. The bad news is the rest of the code we're writing tonight is JavaScript. Let's switch over to that before we get into break. I'm going to create a new file called login.js. I'm going to throw it down in the bottom half of my VS Code so we keep our JavaScript and our HTML straight. I'm going to head to my HTML on my login page and go ahead and link in the script src to the login.js that I just created. And now I'm going to say, all right, what's the point of JavaScript on this page? Well, the point of JavaScript on this page is to say, hey, when I hit the login button, I'm going to be submitting the form. On submit of the form, I want you to go to the JavaScript, and what's the JavaScript got to do? It's got to figure out if this is a valid user. Okay. So I'm going to come up, I'm going to throw an on submit on this that says login, and I'm going to get my event. And I'm going to come down here and I'm going to make my login function that's going to capture the event. And I'm going to say the email is equal to the event target. Event target. Elements email value, and my password is going to equal the event target elements password value. And to make sure that's working, I'm going to console log out my email and my password. Can anyone predict an issue before I even test this? Bonus points to anyone who can, because this is a tricky one to know before you test. Document, not really a problem.
I mean, the elements, the element is actually an input, right? Or should we like get their value by their ID?
No, we can do it either way. Not really a preferred way on that. Because we're submitting the form, it's not a big deal to pull it out of the elements of the form. Shay, we haven't written the logic yet to figure out if the username and password are valid yet. We're going to come to that next. But I'm going to come over here and I'm going to type in a@a.com and I'm going to type in ABC as the password. And I hit login and it just disappears. I'm like, WTF, man, where's my console? Well, take a look at your console. When you type in that information, for a split second after hitting the login button, it flashes and disappears. How do we fix that?
Save it in local storage.
Good guess, but no. We prevent default. Good work, Jillian and Kenny. We say event, prevent default. What's the default thing? It's going to refresh the page because it's trying to send information back to the server. And we're like, no, don't send it back to the server. Let us run our JavaScript instead. And now that we're running our JavaScript, now we can get the elements and we can console log it, and it's all going to stay on that page. So I'm going to go back to my email and I'm going to type something in and I hit log in. And what do I get? I get my email and my password that I have typed in. Now you may notice that I'm using email and not username. Why is that? Because users always forget their username. Users never forget their email. So it is a rule in any authentication system that I build that usernames are stupid and you should use emails instead of usernames. Personal opinion, if you really are a username fan, you could use usernames, but I found that users forget their sign-in credentials a lot less when you use their email for their username instead of some random credential. I don't have the statistics behind that, but I think that that's the case. So when you are building your capstones, if you want to annoy me, use a username instead of an email address. All right, anyone not get their output?
My login page went away.
Do you have an error in your console?
Yes,
What's your error?
it says inner HTML 38, line 38 something.
Okay. So before you share your screen, think through what is the error trying to tell you?
This set I think is like the link something, but I put it right. Login.html right
Share your
here.
screen.
Oh man.
Cannot set properties of null setting inner HTML. What are you trying to set inner HTML on?
The ref the link.
Mm-hmm. What ID?
Action links.
Okay, where's your action links?
Let me see where.
You're in index.js, you should be in index.html.
Right here, on top one now. This one right here.
Nope, you're in index.js, you need to be in index.html.
Wait, can you see the top window?
I can. You are in index.js, you
Oh,
need to
okay.
be in index.html. There you go. All right. Now you're trying to set the inner HTML of action links. Where is the ID action links in your HTML?
Did I mess this up? Oh man, I put it over here. Oh man, I don't know. Fuck, man, where did I put that? I put it over here. Read. Oh, okay. I messed up. I get it. So all this has to go into the index.
Just the action links.
That's the action, right? Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. Does it have to
And
go here after this?
we replace the login link with the div, or the new post link with the div action links. Yep, so take out that whole ahref because we
Oh.
moved that into our JavaScript to generate it and put in your action links instead. And just refresh the page. We use an ID of action links, not a class of action links.
There you go.
There you
Okay.
go.
Oh, you have to view the ad.
Mhm. It's gonna require a period as well.
Oh, okay.
Well, it, I would put in a legit email because it's gonna validate it. So now you're missing, it's refreshing, so what are you missing?
It says value. For key.
Nope, that's just the warning.
Okay.
So when the page refreshes, what code should you be thinking about in a form?
Man, where is this? The other one.
Login.js.
Right here.
Yep. And when the page refreshes in a form, what code are we missing?
I think I didn't follow through that where. I
Look in
don't-
the chat.
Let me see. Oh, I can't see the chat now.
Prevent default. That's what you need.
Okay.
Reference my code if you if
Yes,
you're
I was a little behind. I was trying to catch up, but I think I messed up real bad here.
I think once you get your prevent default in, you'll be caught up. Forward, what's up?
It's not red. I don't have any red, but it's giving me a warning.
Okay.
Uh,
Everyone else, if you have your email and password logging out, you can go on break, be back at 7:25. Otherwise, I'm going to stick around for a couple minutes and help whoever needs it. That one you can actually ignore. When you type in an email and password and hit the login button, what happens?
it does
It
like
ref-
a little.
It
little
refreshes the whole
refresh.
page. So what does that say to us? What's the problem?
There's something going on in my JavaScript. Somewhere.
There is, let's go to your login.
Login. That's
And the problem is it's a refresh. So it's got to be something with our event prevent default, right?
Mhm.
When we call a function, what do we need with that function?
Did I forget a question mark?
No, but you're on the right track.
On parentheses.
Yep, at the end. No.
Oh, at the end.
Yep, because prevent default is a function. So the end of line 2 before the, yep, opening and
yeah.
closing.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Oh, wait. Let me see if it works.
I think you should be all right.
Yeah, it's gone. Thank you.
Losh, what's up?
My console is not showing email and password.
Okay, share your screen.
I checked the code. All right, same screen.
Yep.
Okay, so this is the login.js, and this is HTML. So I've attached the script, login.js, prevent default, email and password are being pulled in. Then I'm console login, email and password. When I
How
go-
does the form know to run the login function?
Oh, I gotta add it there.
You have, what event are we using?
Submit.
Uh-huh. Where's your on submit?
Gotcha. My bad. I missed that.
Then I think you'll be caught up.
All right. Thank you.
No problem. Lots of little steps here, right? When I go fast, it's like, all right, make sure I get the steps down and then catch up on the code. But that's the trick. Goggin, what's up?
And also a lot of windows. And I just wanted to see if this was fine. I want to show you real quick.
Yep.
Stop it again. Okay. So this is what it's showing here. Is that fine?
Yep. You
Right.
can take out line 5. That should be a comma, not a period. which you have correct on line 7.
Oh, right here?
Yep.
Okay. Oh, just take it out, you said?
Yeah, well, 5 and 7 are the same thing.
Okay. Oh, yes, it's true. All right,
You're all set.
thank you.
Last call for questions. Okay, I'm back in here. Hopefully I can talk through this. All right. We are, where did we leave off? We left off with our login form. And we have it so that when you hit the login button, it is logging out the credentials. Well, we can't really come up with a fully secure login system right now because this is all client side, right? So there's nothing stopping us from hitting view page source and seeing what the password is supposed to be. There's unfortunately no way to secure that without learning about APIs and databases and password encryption and all of that stuff. So this is not a super secure system in that anyone who knows JavaScript knows that they could get in, look at our source code, and figure out what the password is. However, I think it's still worth in the next hour or so getting this system set up so that we can kind of see the authentication flow. Because down the road, we will be learning APIs. We will be learning about password encryption, right? Those are all things that we will be able to set up. But for now, we're going to build it out with a basic if statement. So all we need to do is in our login.js, say if the email is equal to, and we can decide whatever the valid email address is going to be here. So for this, we're going to say if the email is equal to maxm@hackupstate.com. And it's not just about the email, right? It is also about the password. So I'm going to say, and the password is equal to super secret. Now notice I have a capital S in secret. When we compare strings, we are comparing them case sensitive. So the capital S, when I type in my password, has to be there in order for this to line up. Okay, what do we want to happen if the credentials are true? We want to go to our window, local storage, and set the item. And what item are we setting? I need to go back to my index.html and look at what I used here. I used my is logged in. So I am going to set my is logged in to true. Okay. If it's not true, though, we don't want the user to just sit there and hit the login button and be like, WTF, man, why is nothing happening? So we're going to say alert, login credentials are incorrect. So I save, I come over, I type in a fake email and a fake password, and I hit login, and I get login credentials are incorrect. Okay, I come in and I type in my actual email, put the invalid password, and hit login, and I still get login credentials are incorrect. Okay. Now this is the beauty of testing, right? We want to test all the different possible scenarios because we want to make sure that someone doesn't accidentally type in a valid email and an invalid password and make their way through. So I'm going to type in the right email and password. No, I'm not. I'm going to type in the right email and password and hit login and log in. I'm like, well, I'm not getting the error message. What should be happening?
Switching to the page.
Yeah, how do we do that?
And
Where else did we do that?
Window.location string yeah, that.
Or we can do index.html. That would work as well. All right, so we're saying, all right, set is logged into true. and then take you back to the home page. So that's exactly what I want to test. I'm going to put in my right email. I'm going to put in the right password. And now when I hit login, not only did it take me to the home page, but look at what I've got down here now. Not a login button anymore. Now I've got my new post. Okay. Kind of cool. So I make a new post. I'm thinking I'm something cool because I've got my authentication working. And I'm like, all right, I'm done with the page. I would like to go do what? I want to go log out. And I'm like, oh, where's my log out? I don't have a log out button. So let's add that. Give me you guys a minute though, to catch up here. Any questions on the login code? Do we understand how that flow is working? Sequoia, do you want to share a screen?
Yes. Do you want me to bring my,
Give me a second here. You were missing your on submit on your form tag on line 20.
okay,
I snuck that one in while no one was watching.
alrighty. Thank you.
Everything else looks good though. We have any questions about this code? Okay. So when I'm thinking about my login button, I've got my action links in my index.html, right? But when do I want the login or the log out button to show up? I only want the log out button to show up if I'm logged in. But wait, we already did that logic. We already have down here to show this only if my is logged in is true. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here and I'm going to put a vertical bar just so we've got a little bit of a separator. And I'm going to do another A tag. And I'm going to say log out. But inside that A tag, I don't want an href. I don't want an href because I'm not going to a logout page. I want something to happen on that logout. I want to say on click of the logout, go run the logout function. Well, if I'm logging out, I also need to tell it, hey, my const logout is going to get this event. And how do we want to log out? We are going to say, hey, log window, local storage, remove item. We've seen set item and we've seen get item. Now we're using our remove item, and we are going to remove the item is logged in. Now we've got one more thing we need to do. We need to go back to our action links and make it equal the login. Changing this is logged in the storage is not enough. That's going to remove it from storage, but the logout and new post links are still going to be on that page. So what we have to do is go back to the action links and make the login link show up instead of the new post and the logout button. So I save that, I come over here, I click on my logout, and notice what goes away, the new post and the login, the new post and the logout button. Instead, I get my login. Ladies and gentlemen, you just built your first auth system.
Can you show me what your logout button looked like again?
Yep, sorry, log in. I type in my credentials. I can't spell for my life. And this is what it looks like before I hit the logout button. Now, if we want to, we can add some styling on that. I'm gonna say ID equals logout. And I'm gonna head to my style.css, not my readme. And I can target my logout and make the color on that red and make the text decoration an underline. And maybe I will throw a cursor on that of pointer. I added in this logout function down here, Kenny, that's handling the logout. And then it's linked to this logout function from the on click right here. Change Sequoia in your second A tag up here, change new post to say logout inside the second anchor tag. Jillian, what's up?
I just had a quick question. So since we're setting is logged into true, could you also do it by just changing it? So instead of you removing the item completely, just changing it back to false and then switching back and forth, or is it the same thing, or is it like one preferred over the other?
Not the same thing. Setting it to false would work. It's kind of weird because it's only taking local storage only takes a string, right? So you would think true and false is a Boolean, but in this case, it's not really a Boolean. It's actually a string with the word true inside of it. So because we are explicitly checking to see if the word true is in that local storage, setting it to false would work. However, you may see some shorthand here where it's just checking to see if is logged in exists. And in this case, if you set it to false, it would not actually log you out. So in this case, I would say that using remove item is slightly better. But because we explicitly set this out to check to see if it equals the string true, you could set it to false and it would work the same exact way.
Okay, thanks.
Max is still there.
Okay, share screen.
I don't know what I'm doing tonight.
I think the smoke has got us all hazy.
It's raining out here in Manly, by the way.
Oh, thank God, that's gonna cut down on the smoke.
Yeah.
Okay, on click, log out, log out, log out, log in, log out. Oh, you index. Here you go. You've got your extra new post here. We took this one out because we want the one in our JavaScript instead.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. Jen, what's up?
What did you do before you did the style CSS? Because mine is not turning red and I think I missed a step.
The red is what makes it, the CSS is what makes it red. I did throw an ID of logout on my A tag in order to get this CSS to apply.
In your index.js.
In index.js, yeah, for my logout button, I added that ID in so I could style it.
Ah, gotcha. Thank you.
Corin, what's up?
I got it to go ahead and I can log in, but I don't have the login button popping up on the home screen.
So if you are logged in, you shouldn't have a login button. You should have a new post and a log out button.
Okay, the log out button isn't popping up though.
Okay, share screen. Oh, you can't share your screen because I'm sharing my screen. Sorry. There we go. Now I can see your screen. Log out on click. You are missing some quotes down here, and I think that's causing the problem. Let me request remote. And our on click log out should have a closed quote there. And then because you've got a lowercase l here, you need a lowercase l here. See if that fixes it. Oh, no, you just have a, okay. Let me just refresh this manually and make sure. Nope, that's not the problem. Okay, so let's open your console. And now we've got cannot set properties of null setting inner HTML on 33. So we go look at 33 and it's supposed to be setting action links, right? So I come up here and I look for your action links, and your action links are inside your posts. Well, they shouldn't be inside the posts. They should be down here outside. And we don't need your new post because we're doing that in the JavaScript. So I come over here and now it can find the new post and the log out. And when we click on log out, it takes you back to your login.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
No problem. Anyone have questions? Anyone need help? Anyone look at a concept and go, all right, everything's working, but WTF is this doing? Yep. So we did a couple things. We have our new post button working, and we're trying to say, all right, we need to be able to log out now. So what I did is I said, all right, if we are logged in, I'm going to hijack our logic for the new post button. And what I'm going to do is go to this A tag, add on a new A tag with the logout. And Jen, I'm going to add the ID of logout right here. Then I need to tell it, all right, what happens when I log out? So I add this on click and I add a function that says when you log out, go remove this item called is logged in. So local storage doesn't think we're logged in anymore. The problem is this isn't enough alone to get this if statement to rerun up here. So what we also have to do is go back to our action links, the thing that shows the new post and the logout button, and take out whatever's in there and put back in the login. Then, because the logout button is going to look ugly, I threw an ID of logout on it and also put that in my style.css to turn it red, underline, and make it so the cursor looked like a pointer, so we knew it was a button. All right, one more feature, and then let's review this whole 3-day project. Sound good? Okay. So I would like to be able to delete something here. So I'm going to click on my read more, and I only want logged in people to be able to see my delete button. So I'm going to close out of a bunch of files that I don't need anymore. I don't need my index. I don't need my login. I don't need my style.css. And I don't need my login or my index.js. All I need open is my read.html and my read.js. Okay, so now what do I want to do? I want to make it so next to my return to home button or underneath it, I'm going to add a button that says delete post. And that's going to be a very ugly button. So I'm going to add a class on that of BTN and BTN danger to make it red. And I'm going to say, okay, the user's interacting with that. That screams to me event on click of this, delete the post. And I'm going to say, all right, now we got to tell it how to delete the post. So I'm going to come down here and say const. No, I am indented all the way over there. Const delete post equals some event. And whenever we delete something, it's a good idea to ask the user, hey, are you sure you want to delete this? Please confirm, right? And so that is such a common feature that JavaScript actually has something built in. We can say if the user window.confirm, are you sure you want to delete this post? Delete stuff in here. So we're saying if the window confirms that they want to delete it. What does this look like? Now when we hit delete post, it says, are you sure you want to delete this post? If we hit cancel, it doesn't do anything. If we actually hit the delete button, then it's going to do whatever is inside of our if statement. Kind of a cool, handy shortcut. Okay. How do we go about deleting that? Where is it in the first place? Where are our posts?
Local storage.
Local storage. So we got to go get the posts from local storage. But we've done all of this before. Why don't I just go back to my index.js and grab out the stuff that it takes to get it from local storage? Okay, now that I've done that, I'm going to console log out my posts. So I come over here, I hit delete post and I hit cancel and nothing happens. But if I hit delete post and OK, I get this array. How are we supposed to know which post we're going to delete? We ran into this problem before. How did we know which post to use before?
If statement.
An if statement, but what were we checking? We were using the timestamp. We can use the timestamp like we did in this read more button to know which post we're supposed to delete. Okay, hold on. We've done that before. If I just scroll up in my read a little bit, I can find all of the work. And look what I've got lingering here. I've got my date ID. I already have access to that, so I can actually log out my date ID. And when I hit delete post, it's going to give me the URL. That's kind of convenient, right? Because we already did the work to get the date ID out. Now we can use that date ID in this find. That's helpful, but we can also use it down here. So what we want to do is we want to delete out an item from the array. The problem is that we don't really know what index this is in the array, and that's what we would use for splice and slice and all of those other array methods. It's almost like we want to say our updated posts is going to come from our posts, and what do we want to do? We want to filter out the post where the post filter dot timestamp does not equal the date ID that we used before. So now if I log out my updated posts, what I should see is an array of 3 items instead of 4. Okay, take a step back there. We're seeing a lot of different concepts here, but those concepts are concepts we've seen before. Where are our posts? Our posts are in local storage. When the posts come out of local storage, what data format are they? They're a JSON string. So we need to reverse that and turn it back into an object or an array by parsing it. Now we have to remove out that one post out of the array of 4 different posts. Just like we can use find to go through an array and find the one item that we're looking for, we can use filter to go through the array, and wherever this is true, it's going to keep the item in the array. But wherever this is false, it will take that item, remove it from the array, and only return the 3 posts where that is true. So filter, just like .find up here, is actually using a loop, and it's going through each post and putting it in our post filter. And what we're doing, every post that we look at, we say, hey, does this post filter timestamp equal the date ID? If it doesn't, keep it in the array. But if it does, take that item out of the array, and so our updated posts will no longer have the post in it that we're trying to delete. All right, we did all of that work to get the updated posts. What are the last 2 things we need to do? 3 things we need to do. Come on, this is the equivalent of your Thursday. We're almost at the end of class. Push a little bit more. You need to stringify it because local storage can't take an array. Once we stringify it, what do we need to do with it? You need to put it back into local storage. And once we put that array back into local storage, we got to take them back to the home page. Kenny, we need the opposite of parse, right? We parse when we pull out of local storage to turn the string into an object or an array. But when we put it back into local storage, we need to stringify because we're taking our array or our object and turning it back into the string that local storage can accept. So we're going to say posts JSON. No, we're not. We're going to say post updated JSON equals JSON.stringify our updated posts. And then we are going to window.localStorage.set item posts to the updated JSON that we just made. And then we are finally going to go to our location and take them back to the home page. Come over here, hit delete posts, hit OK, and notice what is gone in our home page. That is it. You have made it to the end. You've created a full project. We got everything done except our update functionality, which we aren't going to dive into quite yet. We might come back to that. What I want to spend the very last bit of class on is making sure that we have understanding. We spent, 2.5 days on this, right? That is a huge amount of time. This doesn't do you any good if you can just read this JavaScript and be like, yeah, all that makes sense. This only helps you if you can say, I'm going to pick one feature and try and figure out how that whole feature is going to work. So we're going to do that starting from how the computer reads the first line of code all the way down through all of our functions. All right. So this is not the order that we wrote it, which is the order that we know. This is the order that the computer runs it. And it's important to note here that the order that we write code is not always the order that the computer runs the code, right? Log out only made sense for us to add until we made our login work. Well, we didn't have our login working until we had new post working. Well, we didn't have new post working until we were on the homepage and had some posts showing up. So we're going to go through not the order that we wrote it, but the order that the computer actually runs it. Jen, what's up?
I'm getting a on-caught reference error.
Share screen. Date ID is not defined. We define it higher up in our date ID. You and your lowercase d.
Oh, yay, thank you.
It's funny when I request remote control, my mouse changes to whatever color your guy's mouse is. And then even when I go up to stop, it's still that mouse color until it goes through. Always entertaining. Anyone else need help before we do our review? Corbin, what's up?
It's not even in what we were just working on. All right. It's in my index, which I went above and like checked everything. I'm not sure it to you. Like I went above and like tried to check and see what was going on. Here, I'll let you look at it real quick.
Yep. Let me request.
So I had an S typed in there originally, and I took the S out, but I'm gonna put the S back in there. We didn't
Post
change anything.
div is supposed to come from our posts div.
But even when I had post div in there, it was still
Now you get
giving me an
inner
error.
HTML because important to say we're an index.js, so we should be an index.html, right?
Mhm.
And I'm going to throw this up at the top. We are trying to set our posts div, which has an ID of posts. And you do have your posts in here. Oh,
Dude, I always have like the smallest like little errors.
hold up. You're on login.html and it's referencing index.js.
Ah,
So
Yeah,
we
I
need to
didn't
go to
even
your
know that.
login.html and tell it to go mind its own business and run its login.js. Now your error goes away there. And when we go back to your homepage is still working.
yeah. I was like, bro, what? All right, thank you.
All right. Last call for help. Anyone need it before we review? Okay. Closing everything. We start at our index.html. Our index.html comes in and it goes Bootstrap. We need some styling. We'll go load in Bootstrap. Now we know what your classes are going to do. Go in, get the style.css. What's in the style.css? Each one, little margin stuff, little log out. Great. I'll remember that when you use those classes, when you use those IDs. Great. Container. All right, I'm not going full width on the screen. If it gets too big, I will constrain that content in. Container, bootstrap, great, I got that. H1, header row, fantastic. Okay, kind of weird that you want an ID of posts on this thing, and there's nothing in this div, but whatever, I just won't show anything in that. ID action link, same thing. Kind of weird that you didn't put anything in that div, but all right, I'll remember that div. All right, I think I'm pretty close to the end of this page, and I hit index.js. The browser goes, oh shit, I got to go do some interactive stuff. So it goes into index.js and it reads it from the top down. So it goes, all right, go into local storage. That is something that is built into the browser, and go get my posts out from it. But that comes out as a string into a variable called post.json. So what I need to do is take that post.json string and parse it out so it becomes an array. Now go back into my HTML, go get the posts div and save that so I get access to it later. Okay, now it comes down and goes generated HTML. All right, start that out as blank, right? Nothing's in there to get started. Now go through all of my posts. Go through each post, and wait a second, there aren't any posts. This is the first time the page is loaded. So this for loop gives us the middle finger and says, I'm not going to do anything because there are no posts inside. We haven't created any posts yet. So go to our post inner HTML, take this empty string and put it in there. We ignore this whole for loop because we haven't created a post yet. Interrupt me at any time if you have a question about this, or if you understand it differently, raise your hand, interject, because if you get it a different way, saying it that way may help another student get it. Okay, so we go to this for loop, we skip the for loop because we haven't made any posts yet. We take this generated HTML, it's an empty string, we throw that in the inner HTML, there's nothing going on there. Okay, now we come down here and we go back into our local storage and we say, are you logged in? We are not logged in. So we ignore this entire if section and go down to this else section. The else section says, go get the action links, which are back in our index.html, and go throw in an A tag with a login button. Okay, that is our index.js, the entire first run through. We ignore this logout because it's in a function. Nothing told that function to run. Do we have any questions about the flow so far? Okay. Now, computer's done. It's going to sit there until an event happens. What that event is going to be is the user clicks the login button. That login button is taking us to login.html. So we go over to our login.html and it goes, all right, Bootstrap, know how to pull that in. Everything's Gucci there. Go down to the container, show H1, show H2. All right, here's this form. I'm going to remember this on submit is linked to something. What do I want to show up in the form? I want two different inputs and I want a button with a type submit. So when they click on this button, it's going to fire off the on submit that is in the form. So then we go into our login.js and we say, all right, when this form gets submitted, what happens in our login.js? We go prevent default. Don't refresh the page. I'm going to do some login code here. I want to handle this on my own. Then I'm going to come down and I'm going to get out the email and password from the event of the target, which is the form. In the form has some elements. those elements are email and password that line up with our email and our password of the IDs over here. So we get the value out of what got typed in there. Now that we've got those in our JavaScript, we got to do something with them. We've got them in their own variable. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the email here, and we're going to check to see if their email address is equal to this very specific string. If it is not, then it's going to alert out the credentials are incorrect. If it is correct, then it's going to go on and it's going to check to see, and is the password correct? We get super secret here. Where is password and email coming from? It is trickling down from the value of what got typed into the form. Okay, now if either of these are incorrect because we use the AND operator, it's going to go down to this else and it's going to tell them they're incorrect. But if they are correct, if they got the email and the password, we need to store that somewhere. We need to have access to that on the other page. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to local storage and we're going to set our is logged in to true. Once that's set to true, we want to redirect the Windows location back to our index.html. All right, now we end up back on our index.html. So because I got to go through all this shit again. Gets the H1, it gets the post, it makes the action links. These are empty. It goes to our index.js, has to rerun our index.js all over again. It goes to local storage, it parses it out. It makes this empty string. It goes, guess what? I still don't have any freaking posts saved into local storage. I ignore this for loop. I come down here, I come to my local storage. Oh, we are logged in now. So I'm going to ignore this else statement. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the action links, and inside the action links, instead of putting the login button, I'm going to put two links in instead. I'm going to put in my new post and I'm going to put in my log out. So I come back to my page and I have my new post and my log out. Okay. Do we have any questions so far? Is this review helpful? You guys can give me a thumbs down and I can just end class now and you can get out of here 20 minutes early. Keep going. Okay. So we're in our page and I hit the new post button. Where did that new post button come from? It came from the A tag right here. That has an href on it that's going to go to our new post.html. So we open our new post.html, and even though it looks like a lot of HTML, it's just a form, right? That form has a button with a type submit, and when that form is submitted, we go to our create post. We've seen a on submit before with our login form. This is the same idea. So we go down to our new post, and that new post has this create post function that is linked to the on submit of the form. Okay, now how do we make a new post? Well, first of all, we got to prevent default because the browser's being dumb and refreshing the page. We don't want it to do that. Whenever it submits a form, it's going to do that. We prevent that default. Now we go, all right, we're going to make our post an object. Why are we making it an object? Because we want two reasons. We want to be able to access all of these values by their key. That's reason one. And reason two is we want to group all four of these things together. All four of these things together are related to that one post. When we make other posts, we want to make sure that those four things get grouped together as well. So we make this object so we can reference one variable and store four pieces of information inside of it. Three of those pieces of information come from our values from the form. And the last one is coming from this function called date.now, which is generating out a timestamp for us to save into the option. Okay, well, before we can take that post and throw it into local storage, we need to get the existing items out of local storage. And because we are storing multiple posts, we need to store that in the array data type. So we go get the item out from local storage, but the problem that we run into is that that could be empty. No posts have been created yet. So what we do is we make this thing called posts array, and we don't put anything in it yet. Then we go into this post string, which is coming out from local storage, and we say, is there not a post string? In other words, is there nothing in the posts in local storage? In this case, there isn't. So we take our post array that we created up here and we make it equal to an empty list. Now that we have an array, we can have a list, we can put items in it. Okay. If there was something in local storage, though, what we need to do is parse that mofo out, because that post string is coming out as JSON. Even though that's JSON, it's a string. We need to convert the string back into an array so we can work on it. So we make an array one of two ways. We either make an empty array if whatever's coming out of storage is empty, or we take the array that is in storage as a string and parse it out so it is a true array. So if I check my post string up here, it is always going to be a string. But if I check my array down here, it is always going to be an array, because no matter if the if statement runs or the else statement runs, either way, we're generating an array. Okay. Now that we did all of the work, we haven't connected our post object to the array that we're generating here. In order to do that, we take our new post, which has all 4 key value pairs, and we push it into the array. We add it on to the end of the array. Now, because local storage is a little pain in the ass, we have to convert it back to a string, because local storage cannot hold an array or an object. It has to hold a string. So we use JSON in reverse. We say, take this array and make it into a string, and we're going to call that new posts array. We take the new posts array and we set that into our local storage under the key posts. And finally, we tell that function, hey, once you've done all of that work, redirect us back to the home page. Questions on any of that?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Will it matter if you put your line number 24 inside the else? Because the first time the code runs, there's no posts, there's no array to begin with, right?
It will matter, because what it would do is create this empty array. But if I took this push and put it in the else, it would not add the post that we just created to the array, to the empty array.
Gotcha. Understood.
And because of that, we would always get caught in the if statement. No, that would mean the first time we created a post, it would not show up. But anytime we tried to create a post after that, that post content would show up. So yes, it is important that this is outside of the else, because we want this post to get added to the array, regardless of whether or not we're creating that array from scratch or pulling it out from storage. If we did want that to be the case for whatever reason, we could move it to inside the braces for either the if or the else. All right, good so far? All right, so we go back to our index, and I think now for the last time, we go, all right, post is empty, action links is empty, go back to the index. I'm in my index, go get the stuff from local storage, go parse it out. oh, whoa. Posts are in the array now. We've got something in there that we want to loop over. So there's only one post in there so far, but that's okay. Let's loop over that one. Get that one post out for me. Okay, what would you like to do? I would like you to take generated HTML, which is an empty string to start, and put a div inside of it. And where is all of this coming from? This is all of our Bootstrap, right? Bootstrap told us, hey, if you want a card, here are all the different divs with all the different classes you want to use on it. Great. Okay, I make the card, I make the card body, I come down to the card title, and I hit this $ curly brace, and it goes, hold on, I don't want the actual letters to show up inside of this thing. I want to go to the post. Where's the post coming from? It's coming from our loop. What is our loop going over? It's going over the posts. Where are our posts coming from? It's coming from the JSON that got parsed from our post JSON. Where is our post JSON coming from? It's coming from our local storage posts. Where is our local storage posts coming from? That is getting set in our new post here. Where are those new post array coming from? That's getting stringified from my posts array. Where's my post array coming from? It is pushing in the post that came from the event target, that came from the create post, that made it all the way up to the on submit, where I typed in all of that information into the inputs. It's an Uno reverse card for you. Weren't expecting that, were you? Okay, so we go all the way back to our index.js, and we're pulling out all of the keys. You'll notice the title, author, timestamp, and content all line up with the keys in our new post: title, content, author, timestamp. This object that we created all the way back here is what is allowing our index.js to generate out all of that HTML from the data in the array that we're using JSON to store in local storage. If that isn't the biggest, longest run-on sentence of terms that we've learned this week, I don't know what is. Okay, so we generate out all that HTML. We make a new div for each time this loop runs, for every post that it creates. And what do we do with that? We take that generated HTML and we put it into the posts div that we got from our HTML ID. Now, in all of that, we do one final thing. We sneak in this question mark for the read more button. That read more button is always going to link us to read.html, but the browser ignores anything after that question mark. That question mark is saying, I'm sending you some additional data here. You don't need to worry about it. When the page gets it, it's going to know what to do with it. The question mark, just like an object, has key value pairs. The key is what comes before the equal. The value is what comes after the equal. And we use a template literal here to say, actually go get the timestamp and dump that into the URL. We can see that working because when we click on this read more button, you notice the timestamp in the URL is different than if we go to a different post and see the timestamp over here. Okay. So the browser goes to our read.html, and our read.html is like, all right, make the post content show up, empty div. Not quite sure how the delete post works. Don't worry about it. No one's clicked on it. We go into our read.js and it goes, okay, go get the posts out of storage, out of local storage, go parse them out so it's an actual array so we can loop through them. Now we've seen window before, go use location. And instead of using location and redirecting them to a different location, we're going to go get the href out of that. Then we're going to use the search params, which are also known as the query params or the get params, and go get the timestamp out of it. Where did this timestamp come from? The timestamp came from our index.js when we put in the timestamp right here. So what are we trying to do in our read? We are trying to get out that date ID that is in the URL. We're trying to get this number right here. So what do? We get that date ID, but the problem is we've got an array of all of the posts. So we need to find the post that we're looking for by going through each one of the posts and comparing the timestamp to the date ID that is coming from our URL. Okay, we get that and we find the matching post. Great. We have that one object out of the array of all of the objects that has the data in it that we're looking for. Because of that, we can go get the post content that's coming from our HTML, our empty div, and we're going to use a template literal to generate the HTML that has all of the content in it, all of the data in it that we found in our matching post by sorting through the posts that got parsed out from our post JSON that came out of local storage. We make that content show up. Excuse me. I'm going to spare you guys the delete flow, because the delete flow, hopefully, is the same exact flow that we've done everywhere else. We're combining a lot of those concepts. The only difference is instead of finding the post, we want to filter out that one particular post and leave all the other posts in there. So we use filter instead of find here to remove one of the items or multiple items, in this case, just one. We remove that one item that we're trying to delete, then we update local storage and send them back to the homepage.
I have a quick question.
No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
When we filtered out the post, how come when we use the date ID, did we use the exclamation point equal sign versus the double equal sign like above?
That is a
How come we
great.
didn't keep that same format?
That is a great question. The reason why we have to do a double instead of a triple is that if we actually, if I console log my date ID, we see what we think is a number, right? And we're like, what's the data type of that number? It's a number. Well, it isn't actually. If I show the type of, it's a string. That is because whenever we use get parameters, it cannot know the data type. Every URL parameter we use happens to be a string. So that's kind of like when we stored information into local storage. If we store a number in there and pull it back out, that number is actually a string. And so what we do is if we use a double equals, it will actually compare the value of the string to the value of the number. If we use a triple equals, it will not only compare the two of them, but it will make sure that the data types on either side are the same. So a double equal will compare two different data types, no problem. And if those are the same values, it's fine. A triple equal will compare the values on the left and right, but then also check to make sure that the types of the left and right of the equality operator are the same.
Okay, that makes sense.
So let me give you just a quick example. Don't follow me, just an example. If I say console.log, does 1 equal the number 1? True, of course it does. Well, why? 1 is in a string because we use the double equals. If I change this to does 2 equal 1, we get false, okay? Well, if I do a console log, does 1 triple equal 1, now notice I have a false because we are checking does the number data type over here match the number data type over here. It doesn't, which is why we get a false. So I did a sneaky little trick here. I knew date ID was going to be a string because we got it out from the search params. So search params are kind of like local storage, that no matter what data type is actually up there, it is always going to bring back a string. So in this case, I very intentionally only use 2 equals because I didn't want it to check data types. I only wanted it to check the value. That was a very, very good question and very perceptive of you to pick up on that. We almost always want to use triple equals because there are times that we'll compare like false to 0. And believe it or not, if we say, does false equal 0? It does. We're like, what the heck? Does false equal 1? No, it doesn't. That is because both false and 0 are what we call falsy values. The computer thinks they are false. So in this case, if we didn't want that to happen, we would use our triple equal, and then we would get the value that we expect. So it's almost always better to use a triple equal, unless you very intentionally don't want to compare the data types on one side or the other, at which case you can use your double equal. Very good question, and that is frequently asked on technical interviews. What's the difference between a double equal and a triple equal? Just out of checking data types in addition to the values of the data. You can use a double equal or a triple equal with a not equal to as well. Does cat not equal dog? True. Cat does not equal dog. In this case, we could use a single equal and it would be the same because the data types on either side are the same. So the exclamation point equal is just saying not equal as opposed to the double or triple equal, which is saying equal.
Speaking of the console log, how come on our login.js, we left the console log on there, but we didn't for our other JS? I mean,
In
does it matter?
login.js? No, you mean
Yeah,
new
the
post.
no, the login.js when we left the email password console log on there.
I don't have a, oh, down here?
Yeah,
Yeah, we should take that out. And we should also take out the console log on our new post.js. We don't need this button clicked. The create post one isn't as big of a deal because if a user was on your site and happened to see button clicked in the console, it's not really a big deal. But if you did leave this in here, hypothetically, a user could go into the console, see their password in plain text and be like, oh, this isn't a secure website, which isn't really the case, but it is a good idea to take that one out.
okay, thank you.
You have a third good question because you got 2 in a row.
I don't yet. Still listening. This was very helpful.
Good. It is 8:30. I will stay around until you guys have no questions left, but I don't want to hold you. Tomorrow is Open Hack, 6 p.m. Common Space. I will post the door code, or you can RSVP on Meetup and Mike will send out the door code. Hopefully I will see as many of you guys there as possible. If I do not, please remember class is in person next week, if you can make it. And the room number for Monday alone is the Science Center edition, SCA number 101. It is number 3 on the Lemoyne map, which is right here. Blow that up. So we've parked in C before, and that is the number 3 building, SCA 101. If you walk in there and panic and go, oh, there are other people in here, don't. The certificate program students from Lemoyne are going to be attending that presentation as well. So you guys will not be the only ones in the room. It is open to all Erie 21 Lock 4 students. And then we will head over to the classroom for the second half of class and finish up our last week of JavaScript. Palash, what was your question?
It's not that good of a question. Can you please explain prevent default again? It's not.
Yes. So if I take out the prevent default here and I go back to my login page and I type something in and I hit login, oh, bad example. What it's going to do is it's going to refresh the page. And it's like, well, why is it doing that? That's because by default, the browser sees that you filled out a form. And so the only thing that it knows what to do on a form is to send that information up to the server. And to send it up to the server, it sends the whole page basically up. And we're like, well, we don't want you to send the page to the server because we don't have a freaking server to deal with that information coming in. And so the default action is for the browser to do that. And we're like, hold up, when that event comes in, prevent the default action of that event, which is sending the information to the server. That's what prevents that refresh, or what looks like a refresh, from happening. And because of that, now we can define what we want it to do in our JavaScript.
Okay. So, like whenever you type form in VS Code and hit enter, it adds an attribute called action, which is like the values can be like get or post when you're creating a
Sending it to the server. Yep.
is there a way to send that information through that attribute to local storage?
No. Local storage is a JavaScript concept compared to that action, which is a like an HTTP concept. So you're going to learn all about get, post, put, patch, delete. That's all I got off the top of my head. There are about 10 of them. Clearly, I only used about 6 of them. But anyway, you're going to learn about that from Ryan's module. You won't actually be using it on the form element itself, but you will be learning how to use a tool called Postman and how to generate out those different methods in a request. And then when you come back to me, you're going to, well, you'll get it with Ryan as well. You're going to learn how to use those methods in a method and a function called fetch. And fetch is what in your JavaScript is going to allow you to make those requests to a server. And then when you come back, you learn React, and after React and the database, you learn, all right, I know how to make those in my front end and how to call someone else's API. How do I make my own API that can respond to those requests in my front end? And that's kind of what we're working our way up to. But the only default form actions are all of those server actions. I would love for there to be a action equals local storage and to have it just do that. But we have to kind of do the legwork and do that in our own JavaScript. The browser isn't smart enough to do anything except the server.
Thank you.
Not a dumb question. That was a very good question. Any question that I can take 30 seconds longer to answer. More than 30 seconds is a good question.
I don't know if it's more than 30 seconds, but you know how when we make events and stuff, like we have this like event words that's already like kind of reserved, like on submit, on click, and stuff like that.
Yep.
We can create our own events, right? That's what we've been doing, kind of.
I wouldn't say creating your own event. The event is something that gets generated by the browser, right? So your event would be an on scroll or an on click or an on change or a on window resize, or all of those are their own events that are built into the browser. What we can do though is we can make our own function and hook that function up to a defined event.
Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to see what does that look like again? Just want to make sure that I'm making.
So the easiest place to see it is our login.html. So we say on submit, go run the login function. Well, where's the login function? That is the function that we created ourselves.
Okay, all right, okay, that's the syntax. That makes sense though. I always kind of wondered, but I just want to make sure.
So if we wanted to, we could call this sign in, and then call it sign in here, and it would do the same exact thing. We can name the function whatever we want, but that is how we hook up. That is one way we can hook up an event to a function.
Yeah, that's what I think I meant. Like we can name it whatever we want. Okay.
Yes, yes. The other thing you can do is you can document get element by ID, go get the form, and then say on submit, go do this login thing. And there's a third syntax because JavaScript is confusing, where you can say get element by ID form, and add the event listener of a submit, and then console log out, login to. And all three of those would be valid ways to add a event listener to the form.
Okay. That makes sense. All right. I mean, the first one, is that like the standard we do? The first event one? Does not really matter. There's
I
no-
like it. I like that more because it draws the line between the HTML and the CSS more. You can kind of understand that because we called it login here, it's going to go run this login function over here. So I like that more because the relationship between the JavaScript and the HTML is more clear, but you can do it either of these two ways. And I also see that all the time. Some people think, oh, it makes more sense to attach what the JavaScript is going to do in the JavaScript itself. Whatever, any of these three work, it doesn't really matter.
Thank you.
Gagan, what's up?
So my question was, so like, you know how we wrote this whole thing to make the form run? So isn't like there pre-modules already made that we only need to add a couple things to it? Like I don't know.
Not really until you get into React. React will have some components that have functionality completely built into them. But for something like the login system, you're going to run into things where, well, I called it is logged in. Other people could call it authenticated.
Okay.
So there are packages that do some of this work for you, but not at the vanilla JavaScript HTML level. More when you get into React, then there will be some things like that. But you always have to be, there's a mentality that I'm sure Caitlin can attest to loving called buy versus build. And it's basically the idea of, hey, when you are working for a company, does it make more sense to build this feature from scratch, or does it make more sense to buy something that already does this thing and then we can customize it on top of that? The same thing, the same concept goes for your code. Does it make more sense for us to create a whole login page on our own, or does it make more sense to go find someone else's login screen, make sure we understand how it's working, make sure that we know it's secure, integrate that into our code, and make sure it doesn't break any of our other code?
There you go. That's what I meant. That's what I meant is that because like personally, I understand the concept of this, like, you know, how it works now. But for me to go back and rebuild everything like you did, it probably would take longer to make it happen than if you give me a code to fix it. Maybe I will try to and probably fix it. And I don't know, like maybe I will be able to make it, but I don't know. Like I understand.
So, the idea of this project is to kind of push all of the basic concepts of like, you're getting for loops, you're getting functions, you're getting events, you're getting variables, you're getting local storage, right? Like there are very few JavaScript concepts that we don't touch on in this project, which is why we say this project almost until the end of JavaScript. And this is a project that we're going to be coming back to and learning how we can build this in React and make it easier. And then we're going to come back to it when we get our API working, and we're going to learn how to integrate the database into it. So this project is more about, hey, are you getting all of these little concepts of JavaScript together? which is why it can feel overwhelming or harder to recreate it, because we're pushing the bounds of all of your JavaScript knowledge. With all of that said, this is not login is commonly something that you have to decide, hey, do I want to use someone else's login system or do I want to use my own? And when you use someone else's login system, especially when you get to server side, it can be a little bit harder because you've got to integrate it on the front end and you have to integrate it on the back end. And then you have to make sure that when someone is making a request from the front end, that they're actually authenticated on the back end and you know that person is who they say they are. So login is very commonly a feature that gets bought out in terms of other developers will use a different authentication system. But there's a reason why we don't do that in class tonight. And it's to show you, hey, local storage can be used for more than storing data. And we can use if statements and we can kind of combine all of that together.
Yeah, so like basically we are just practicing vanilla JavaScript here, like, you know, so
Yes.
we understand more how to make it happen if we want to make it happen. But
Yes.
just for the sake of customer safety, then we can just buy out, and then, you know, if we, so, you know, like it's more secure, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, if you came to me as a client and said, hey, I would like a blog, I'm not going to go, oh, let me go write 400 lines of code for you and hand you a blog. I'm going to say, screw that, and I'm going to set up WordPress for you. And I'm going to say, go use WordPress. Well, why go use WordPress? Because WordPress has 1,000 other features than what we created tonight. But that's not the point of the project, right? The point of the project is to teach you all of that vanilla JavaScript. Now, if you came to me and said, oh, I want a blog, but I want all of these different unique features, well, maybe I'm going to look into building them into WordPress instead of writing out that custom stuff. And so whenever a client comes to me, I go, all right, what am I going to do this in? Am I going to do this in a tool that fits 90% of what they need and I'm going to build out the last 10%? Or is what they're coming to me with a completely novel idea that we've got to make from scratch? And that's what the past 7 years of my career has been making those things from scratch, which is where all of this JavaScript comes in handy. But it really depends. Though all of those features that my boss comes to me with and says, hey, I need the software to do this, really has not been done before. It's not reinventing the wheel because there was no platform that would support the features that he needed created. So that's not to say that you'll never use this. There are certainly times where if you're working on a new or novel idea, you can always use Bootstrap, you can always use buttons, you can always use little pieces of things that have already been created. But at a certain point, you'll also have to say, hey, this is a unique feature to whatever I'm making. And because of that, I'm not going to just shop around on the shelf and pull something out. I'm going to actually apply and make it from scratch.
Perfect. Thank you. That made a lot of sense.
So basically, this is to teach us the basic and foundational understanding so that when we're presented with those type of projects, we'll know what's going to work best for what they're requesting. Like,
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
That's something that comes with experience, right? And oftentimes a junior developer will not be asked to make that decision only because they don't know better, right? They aren't familiar with how to learn a framework or a tool very quickly and then compare that to other tools. So usually those decisions, whether it's what programming language are we using, what CSS framework are we going to use, what backend language are we going to use, what database are we going to use, what pieces of our app can we use, that are pre-built, what licenses do we have to buy for that software? All of that is part of usually the senior developers' responsibilities on the team. And 95% of the time, if you get hired at a company, you're not going to be the first developer at the company. There are other developers that have worked there and written code already. So even though in class, every couple of days, it seems like we're starting a new project. Well, when you go into a company, you're going to be handed a couple thousand, in the case of the company that I work at, a couple 100,000 line code base, and you're going to be asked to add something new to it. Well, what you're adding new to it is going to be using all of those decisions that have been made before you get hired at the company.
Oh, okay.
But even if it's not using JavaScript, you're still going to need if statements. You're still going to need functions. You're still going to need loops. You're still going to need to understand events. You're still going to, right? Like all of these concepts are going to be applicable no matter what language or frameworks or tools that they are using. They may be called something different, but it's the same concept.
Okay.
Caitlin, did you have something to chime in?
No. All my experiences are kind of like what you said, actually. I just wanted to say, like, as a junior developer, my first job, I was like, oh yeah, this is great. Everything's already built. I don't have to do anything from scratch. And then as I went on, I'm like, why are we even writing this code? There were a couple projects where I was like, I blatantly was like, why don't we just buy something that's already built? This is so tedious and so unnecessary to be maintaining. And sometimes you don't know, even like the companies don't really realize how large something can get over time. And so you end up with like a lot of tech debt, and then you end up changing your
Tech
mind.
debt? What's tech debt?
And then you end up with like,
No, I'm serious. They probably don't know what tech debt is.
oh, they don't know what tech debt is. You're right.
I don't.
It's just like code that is no longer as useful as it once was, or has become kind of dirty. It's not clean, and there's a lot of like, I feel like there's a lot of hacky things going on when you run into tech debt, where like something was thought out nicely originally, but then you've got to go in and like adjust things for like a specific use case. And then if you do that enough times and you're not clean about the tools that you're using or the code that you're writing, it just compounds over time and it becomes really unmanageable.
So Goggin had a good example. He said jQuery, right? jQuery 10 years ago was the peak of JavaScript. It was like, you would be nuts if you wrote any of your code in vanilla JavaScript, because jQuery was such a more efficient, faster, easier way to write it, right? And you can kind of think the same thing about Bootstrap, right? Yeah, we can make all of our interfaces and then we learn how to make them in Bootstrap, and it's like, well, this is dumb. Why don't we use Bootstrap on every website? jQuery was very similar, right? At the time, document.getElementById, believe it or not, is like a newer JavaScript feature. Before that, it was a nightmare to use selectors in JavaScript. And so everyone just used jQuery because it was a much better way of using selectors. So what tech debt basically is think about it like actual financial money debt. Well, you make this decision now and you're like, all right, this isn't the cleanest way of doing it, or I'm repeating some code here, or this feature isn't going to get really used a ton. So I'm just gonna do it this hacky way and I'll come back to it. And it may not have been hacky at the time, but then like true financial debt, you have to pay interest on that. So the longer you leave that shitty, crappy code in your code base, the more interest grows on it. And when I mean interest, I mean, okay, well, when I go to actually pay off that tech debt to make it the cleaner, more efficient code, I've got a ton of interest on it because that crappy code has been festering away in the corner. And now I need to go back and fix it. And because it's been however long, it's going to be harder to fix because it was in there longer.
And there's like more things connected to it, and like it just becomes a headache. Yeah.
Caitlin, the latest tech debt that we just ran into at Tuzag was Dave was like, oh, this formatting in the content API is coming out with P tags around everything. And because of that, none of Ash's styling is applying. Like the P tag styling is overriding the H1s that it goes into.
Oh, no.
And so my solution, and hopefully this example makes sense. Basically, I had an H1 tag, and then inside the H1 tag, a P tag was going inside of it. And I was like, all right, well, I'll just remove the outer P tags and then it won't be a problem. Well, I went to do that and I'm like, well, what if there are multiple paragraph tags? And I'm like, oh, well, we need to support multiple lines of text. I can't just remove the outer P tags, but I still need line breaks to work. And so I had to go into the serialize function and like go all the way down and be like, fuck it, we're not using P tags anymore, and blew everything up because I changed the way we were serializing the JSON. So that was an example of, oh, I could do it an easy way and just remove the outer P tags and everything would be fine. But that would have created tech debt of generating invalid HTML. And so I very intentionally said, well, I'm not going to just do the quick solution here. I need to think it through and come up with a proper solution that's not going to cause headaches down the road. And that's what tech debt is. Sorry, I completely interrupted you.
Oh, no, it's fine. I mean, you deal with it pretty much everywhere in some fashion.
Shape or form. Yeah.
It's how severe it is that makes or breaks your mental state. I mean,
well, and there are times that I get into code and I'm like, this tech debt, the interest on this is bigger than the project itself. I'm just going to delete this and start it over from scratch. And that's the real danger of tech debt.
man, my first job was really fun. We're still recording. I'm not going to drop names, but it was very